Here is Montegrappa Harry Potter Thestral, a black ink. Let's jump straight to the end with my opinion on this ink. Now, I forgot to run the camera while I was doing the writing sample, so you get the old school, here it is afterwards, between my wiggling fingers. This is a very well done black that performs as it should and is easily available, and probably should be easily available as a just regular black ink. The swatch will show some sheen on it, and a big part of the writing, I never saw any kind of sheen. As the papers change, I didn't see any kind of tone variation. Off camera, the pens didn't expose any kind of weakness that this ink may have. Now, on non-fountain pen friendly paper, this is a strong performer, even on the copy paper towards the end. The issue that I can see people really having will be the cost of this as a black ink. But this is for the Harry Potter fans, and for them, I think this ink is going to be worth it and well loved. The pen for today is a Lamy All-Star. Now that we know my opinion on this ink, let's see how I got there with the first writing sample done on Clairfontaine. We get to see that there is absolutely just a beautiful dark black ink on the page, nice crisp lines, no feathering, no spreading, absolutely no tone variation happening here at all, no shading, just a beautifully performing black ink that I think is a good winner. Looking at the back of the page between my wiggling fingers, you see there is no bleeding and no ghosting. Let's take a look at some other inks from the same manufacturer. Here is Montegrappa Harry Potter Gryffindor. Here is Montegrappa Harry Potter Hufflepuff. Here is Montegrappa Harry Potter Night Bus. Here is Montegrappa Slytherin. The next writing sample is done in a Portage Reporter's Notebook. Here we get a tone that is exactly the same as it was on the Clairfontaine. It doesn't feather, it doesn't spread, it doesn't shade, it keeps having nice crisp lines, even on this non-fountain pen friendly paper that miraculously performs well with a lot of fountain pens, which is the reason that I keep using it. Looking at the back of the page between my wiggling fingers, there's no bleeding, no ghosting, and no problems. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is immediately put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. The one on the right, marked with a D, is let dry for 10 minutes before putting into water. The next writing sample is done on a national brand Steno notebook. On this toned paper, we get no tone shift at all. The same tone as the Clairfontaine. It doesn't feather, it doesn't spread, it doesn't shade. It still has nice crisp lines, making this a great ink, really, with almost everything that I've used it on. Looking at the back of the page between the wiggling fingers, there's no bleeding and no ghosting. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. The highlighter is on the top left, pen flush is on the top right, 1/3 bleach solution is on the bottom left, and water is on the bottom right. The next writing sample is done in a Rhodia notebook. We see here how well it stands out against the quad rule. Not that we really had any kind of suspicion it wouldn't do well, considering it is a nice dark black. It's the same tone as the Clairfontaine, no feather, no spread, no shading. No doubt this is a good ink. Looking at the back of the page, we get no bleeding and no ghosting. With over 1,000 inks reviewed, let's take a look at some color comparables. Here is Colorverse Vortex Motion. Here is Diatramentis Archive. Here is Diamine Onyx. Here is Jinhao Black. The next writing sample is done in a composition lab notebook. It still stands out against this quad rule without any kind of a problem. Now, this paper has a tendency to make an ink look a bit duller or flatter than it did on the more premium stuff. It doesn't here. It is the same tone that we had on the Clairfontaine. It doesn't feather, doesn't spread, doesn't shade, looks fantastic, would really be a good ink for any Harry Potter fan in the classroom. Looking at the back of the page, we get no bleeding, no ghosting, and have no problems writing back here. While it's nice to see ink in the same color family, I prefer to see ink to complement the color on the page. Here is Diamine Wine Divine. Here is Krishna Mandara. Here is Krishna Freedom Gold. Here is Caran-d'Ache Infrared. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. I said this was a strong performer on non-fountain pen friendly paper, and here we see that, yes, there's a tiny bit, the tiniest bit. You really have to be nitpicking to go after any feathering that's going on here. It performed fantastically. There's a tiny bit of spread that's going on, but again, you really have to be picking on this to go after it. It doesn't shade. It has great performance on the 20-pound copy paper. Looking at the back of the page, yeah, we probably can't use it. It gets fairly deep into the paper and you'd probably ruin both sides, but it didn't bleed through touching the notes on the next page. So what nib and pen do I think are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? Even here on this yellow paper, we see that there's no changing of this ink, showing just how really opaque it is. Now, I found the medium flow fine in this Lamy All-Star. It gave a very nice solid black line with no shading, which is how I like my black inks. Off camera, I used a dry stub and a super wet broad, and neither gave me any tone variation, no shading, and nothing gave me sheen in any of the other than in the color swatch. So the conclusion is fairly obvious that this is a dealer's choice. It doesn't matter what you use, you are going to get the exact same performance, like magic. I hope you got something out of this video, and thanks for watching. I want to let you know that the best way you can support this or any channel is to let retailers know where you heard of something if you go to buy.